I have a new update on Davius Richard, and now my whole perspective has been altered. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Now, we'll wrap up today's episode with a look at a little bit of sappiness, a little bit of, just touching the heartstrings, pulling the heartstrings, and it's Dawn Thornton attending the UAPB graduation despite being the new Alabama A&M head women's basketball coach. Prior to that, we'll look at Edward Waters' new women's basketball coach, Eric Jackson. He comes in with a long line of success and a little bit of familiarity specifically to Edward Waters, but we kick off today's episode with an update that changes everything. The news that I got on Sunday night, I believe it was Sunday night or somewhere in that time frame of this weekend, gave me a completely new perspective on how I view Davius Richard and his NFL future. So, for my everydayers, you're very familiar with what kind of feels like an ongoing series, but Davius Richard to me was the premier HBCU prospect in this draft class. Now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was a quarterback, because when you look at some of the invitations, he didn't receive the same invitations that other people did. So I wouldn't say it was premier from that place. But when you talk about name recognition, when you talk about positional value, and when you just talk about skill level, he's up there, right? So Davius Richard was the guy that I would have watched the most. But the reason I say would have, and it's a lot of past tense, and that's because at the HBCU Legacy Bowl, he got injured. Now, I'm going to go through, this is the third part of the series in a way, and that is looking at the future of Davius Richard. I'm going to go over the first two really quickly because it's not like it was yesterday and the day before. This was weeks ago. I think the second time I gave an update, I was, first off, very pessimistic. I know that I was extremely pessimistic about his future, but we'll get to that in the second part, right? That was a week ago. I think it was early last week, if I'm not mistaken. But let's take it all the way back to the first one, when Davius Richard first got injured in the Legacy Bowl. I've said it before, and I'll probably say it every time that I'm talking about this specific topic. When Davius Richard got injured, an air left the room, an air left the stadium, an air left the draft cycle. It was different. Once Davius Richard got hurt, it just felt like everybody took a deep breath and exhaled forever. We still haven't gone back to inhaling. That's what it felt like to me, because collectively we knew that's the guy that we were looking at. If no one else got drafted, I said this before, if no one else got drafted except for Davius Richard, it would feel like a semi-success because there had been no HBCU quarterback drafted forever. You're talking about Tavares Jackson. Way back when, right? So there was a lot of pressure on Richard. There was a lot of attention and a lot of eyes on Richard. So when he got injured, all of that attention and those eyes and all of that pressure, it was gone, because the question now became, what is his draft stock? Will he still be draftable? And I was leaning towards no. And I probably need to speed this up a little bit so we can get to the update. But I was leaning towards no originally, and I kind of kept that stance. And then once he didn't get drafted, now my whole, my angle changed, because, well, he hadn't got drafted. There was no need to talk about it. But then I started realizing he ain't been picked up either. Because when I first said that, I was like, oh, well, he's probably not going to get drafted, but I do still think he'd be a UDFA, which is the undrafted free agent. And I thought he'd be a high-level UDFA because you still had questions about the timeline, all of that. But then you fast forward and you get into he's not been drafted. He hasn't been picked up yet. What's going on? And that was a week ago. And in there, I was extremely pessimistic. In that section, I was sitting here like, yo, I don't know if he's going to make an NFL roster ever. And I stand on with the information I had. That's how I felt. That's what it looked like. Hey, injury history, not injury history, but injury present, really. The injury, he was recovering from an injury. That's the words I'm looking for. But recovering from an injury, the position that he plays, being a UDFA at that, coming from the FCS level, it was just so many things stacked up against him. Like, dang, I don't know if this guy will ever get a chance because it hasn't happened yet. And I feel like it should have happened. And one great guy, right? My man, Josh, HBCU Nightly. He came on and he tweeted that, hey, Davius is going to announce who he signs with after his rehab. That's not a shock. As long as you believe that Davius Richard will make the league, that should have been expected. So I needed to ask a follow-up question for clarification on whether or not I should be joyous, whether or not I should change my opinion, whether or not this is new information to me, because though this is the first time it was told to me. So I guess it was the first time that, also you got to understand, Josh, that's North Carolina Central guy. So he could just be being positive, but I know he knows Richard. So I knew I needed to investigate a little bit further. And this is all on the timeline. This is not me disclosing anything private. This is the update. He said that there's been a team. Can't say who, of course. Wouldn't expect him to, but there's been a team. And he said that's all you can say. Salute, bro. You just said enough. Because if you're telling me that there is a team that Davius Richard know he will sign with, let's remember this. If you're telling me there is a team that Davius Richard knows he will sign with once he's completed rehab, everything that I said last week gets thrown out the window. All of the pessimism thrown out of the window. All of the scrutiny on the timeline, most of that gets thrown out the window. And when I say timeline, I mean the timeline of his injury returning to the NFL. Because if there is a team, and I had to ask, hey, are you saying that the conversation will start later or it has already happened? He said there is a team right now. If you're telling me that, that means he has the ability to study the playbook. I would like if it was just put into writing, because when I take his words, I didn't want to poke anymore, but when I take his words, when I take Josh's words, to me, that sounds like a verbal agreement. That feels like a handshake agreement. That feels like we have an understanding, but we're going to wait until your medicals come back, which honestly, it's smart by the team to safeguard themselves in case of an injury. But there's another way that you can do it and still have it in writing. And I don't know if that goes against any rules for him to be able to study the playbook without being on the team, without having a contract. I feel like it would. Maybe it wouldn't. I'm not going to speak with confidence on that. But when you look at Davius Richard in signing a contract while injured, typically a physical is attached to that. Hey, we're going to sign you understanding that you have to pass a physical. If he doesn't pass the physical, the contract should null and void. That's what I would like to see, because I trust Josh's words. I don't sit here and question it. He's a stand-up guy. I done spoken to him. I'm not here to, just tell you all about him, but like, this is a respectable guy. So I believe him, and I believe this is what he knows to be true. So now the only thing is, I don't think I can get this answer out of him. Why are we not getting a contract? Maybe I should. Maybe I should ask him. Anyway, but you're not getting a contract. I would like to see, this is me, if Davius Richard is already in contact with a team and there's a verbal, if there's just a handshake agreement, there's an understanding, I'm going to sign you once you pass your physical, I would think you could put it in a contract and say the physical must be passed. That's what I would think. But overall, it changes everything, because now you get the chance to learn the playbook. You get the chance to look at a team that's already valuing you, I believe, throughout the season, because with all of the learnings he can do, there's nothing like physical reps. There's nothing like getting back, dropping back, throwing a pass on your third step, understanding the reads through actual physical reps. There's nothing that compares to it. So if you're giving me an offseason or learn the playbook, that's great, and it's going to get me up to speed quicker, but I still need real reps. And with his injury, he likely won't get a lot of real reps. So I still would like to see this team kind of, I don't want to say guarantee him a practice squad spot, but I kind of feel like that's what you kind of should do. I'm saying kind of like, and I'm kind of doubtful, but I feel as if a near guarantee, unless he plays at a 3 or a 2, where it's like, man, this guy is terrible. I don't expect him to play at an 8 or a 3. I expect him to play somewhere in the middle, coming off of injury, taking that acclimation period. It's going to be a thing. I would hope that you say, I know it's not going to be on point right away, but if I give you a year on the practice squad where I can keep you in practice throughout the entire season, then you can be where we want to be at some point, and we can evaluate you next offseason. I still want to see Davius Richard play in the preseason at some point. I still want to see him on a roster. I just would like to see him under those conditions. I know beggars can't be choosers, but that's why I'm not begging. So as you push forward, let's go ahead and look at Eric Jackson, because Eric Jackson comes over from Rust College to Edward Waters, and he comes to the D2 level with a long line of success at his alma mater. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. And if you're a small business owner, LinkedIn is a mandatory procedure for you. Anytime you need to pick up somebody for a void, and I understand nowadays every potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business, but that's okay, because some people go to the casino and they win. I was just talking to my homie who came up big at the casino. So just because it's a wager does not mean you can't come out victorious. Matter of fact, you're looking at nearly 90% of small businesses who go to LinkedIn come out victorious with this gamble within 24 hours of posting a job. It's just that simple. LinkedIn's mission: find the right people for your team faster and for free. All three of those things are great. Find the right person to go ahead and elevate whatever department you're getting into. Go ahead and get it faster, because who wants to wait 4 or 5 years on a develop? Sorry, I'm thinking about quarterback play. But who wants to wait 4 or 5 months even to develop that unit? And it's for free, so it's no risk to you. Go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today. It's the first of its kind, 24/7, all day, every day, live sports network on YouTube. So go ahead and go to Locked On Sports today to subscribe. Edward Waters brings in a high-level NAIA coach to lead their women's basketball team. Now, when you look at Edward Waters, they're not overly far removed from the NAIA themselves. Matter of fact, they've actually coached against this team. Their former coach, their coach of 12 years. So it's been a while since they've had to get a new coach. But they've played Coach Eric Jackson from Rust College. When you just look at him, he was in the GCAC at the same time that Edward Waters was. Edward Waters has been in the SIAC. We're about to do a whole lot of spelling. Boosie and Snoop will be proud of me. But Edward Waters has been in the SIAC for 2 seasons. They're about to enter their 3rd year. So it's not as if they're a long-standing member of the conference. It's not like they're a long-standing member of D2 athletics, period. They just moved in this. They got the acceptance in 2019. I think they became an official member in, what would that make it, 2021? So this is all new to them. But now you're getting somebody who has roots very similar to you, and that's Eric Jackson, the former head coach of Rust College. That was a fellow GCAC school. And that school is, look, that's Jackson's alma mater. So Eric Jackson is a Rust College alum. And when he stepped onto the court as a coach, everything changed. Everything changed for him. Let's go through what Eric Jackson's resume is. Number one, he's the winningest, Eric Jackson, there we go. Eric Jackson is the winningest coach in Rust College history, right? You're looking at a 4-time GCAC Coach of the Year, a 4-time GCAC regular season champion, 3-time GCAC tournament champion. You're looking at all of the, and last year he had the best season in school history. When we're looking at resumes, right? Because let's throw all the familiarity out. Yes, he is very familiar Eric Jackson is very familiar with Rust College. But once you get beyond just the, oh, we know him or we've seen him, once you get beyond that and you just look at the resume of what he was able to do at Rust College, and I understand moving from Rust College to Edward Waters, from the NAIA level to the D2 level, it's a difference in subdivision. But when you look at what he's done with where he's been at, winningest coach in school history, led them to the best season in school history just last year, 4-time coach of the year within the conference, 3-time tournament champions, 4-time regular season champion. This is building a perennial contender in a very short period of time. This is a coach who has a high level of success that has translated on multiple levels. I've seen him do it at high school. I've seen him do it in NAIA. Let's see if he can do it in D2. So like I said, quick turn, not even just quick or not even just turnarounds, but doing it quick. He's got success extremely early. Concordia College, national championship year 2. Rust College, championship year 2. West Side High School, they were 2-20. 2-20 when he took over that job. 12-10 the next year led them to their first playoff. Then they went 20-15, or excuse me, 20-5 in the second year of his time. And he only was there for 2 seasons. When you're looking at what he's been able to accomplish, when you're looking at what Eric Jackson has been able to do, this provides a lot of optimism. You can look at the individual success. You can look at the multiple NAIA All-Americans. You can look at the conference player of the year. You can look at the freshman player of the year. You can look at what Jackson has been able to do as a coach with his accolades, coach of the year after coach of the year after coach of the year. You can look at what he's been able to do with players and say he can develop talent. I can see how much he succeeded on multiple locations, on multiple levels, and say success follows him. He knows how to create winners. And it's not like high school is the same as NAIA. Rust College ain't the same as Concordia College. You have different environments, yet he's been able to work and be able to succeed in multiple places. This is something that should not and will not be understated. It just won't. So let's look at the past 2 years for Edward Waters as well before we push forward. So Edward Waters went from 6-13 and 10-15 overall. So 6-13 in the college, in the conference, and then they went 10-15 overall on the season. That year, they were 6th seed in the East. Next season, they found themselves at 7-12 in the conference, 9-18 with a 4th seed in the East. So it's a slight step up. Year 3, there's a little bit of uncertainty. That's what always interests me. When you show slight progress, but you know what? Whatever, we got it. We go in a different direction now. Does that progress continue? Or do you kind of start it over? Because this is no longer the old guard. This is no longer the previous era. This is now the Eric Jackson era. Now, Eric Jackson is going to be judged by Eric Jackson. But where he starts and what the first year is, now, if you go down to a 1-win team, maybe I'm looking like, But other than that, I mean, yeah, this is a fresh start to me. I don't want to just ask the question and not answer it. This is a fresh start. Also, speaking of asking questions live on the show, I do believe that we are going to do an HBCU DLC pack on the show. Like, I think we're going to do that on the show either Thursday or Friday. I'm right now texting Mason Smith, see if he responded. I might be able to do it Wednesday. I'm more free. Oh, I'm tweaking. I told him tomorrow, thinking today was that. Anyway, so yeah, I can get to him. We're going to get it done. He's just said Wednesday he's more free. So I put the pressure on because it's live. You hear that? The pressure's on you, Mason. But you know what? The pressure is also on Coach Jackson. One person the pressure isn't on as far as at UAPB is Dawn Thornton. Dawn Thornton is no longer under pressure at UAPB. She is now the Alabama A&M head women's basketball coach, but that hasn't changed anything. She's still showing love to her former players and also just supporting them and showing what this college athletics experience is truly about. Today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Now, who wouldn't want to have all of their investments in one easy layout to read? Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. So let's get straight to the point, right? You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation. I get it. Everything costs more. You want to be able to have more in the tuck to pay off your debt, your mortgage, whatever it could be. Yahoo Finance is that place for you. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. And it's not just about being an expert. You can also be a novice and use Yahoo Finance. That's the favorite thing for it. My favorite thing for it is it allows you to grow within the thing, within the website. So for comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com, yahoofinance.com. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Can I get sappy for a second? Right? Like I put this as segment 3 because I didn't want to get I love and hearts and everything. But this is a good topic, and doggone it, this is what college athletics is really about. Dawn Thornton still went to the UAP graduation to celebrate her former players despite being the Alabama A&M head women's basketball coach now. And you know what? I shouldn't even really say sappy. I should kind of say emotional. So you're looking at Dawn Thornton, who went to the UAPB graduation. She's busy trying to formulate a team at Alabama A&M. She's busy trying to get that program in her vision and in alignment with what she wants to do. There's multiple reasons. She's just not the coach of UAPB anymore. No one was requiring or demanding she go to this. This is out the goodness of her heart. And in my opinion, that's what college athletics is about. When you look at college in general, a lot of times that's where you meet lifelong friends. That's where you make different types of bonds. You're in a different place in your life when you go to college than you are arguably at any other time. So when you look at these players, and this goes for everybody who goes to college. It's just different. You meet people. I ain't gonna go into the whole college experience. But when you look at athletes in general, in specific, you're looking at them as somebody who they moved away from home a lot of times, got recruited to be somewhere. It's just them. And the coach is a consistent figure. I'm not going to say it's a father figure or a mother figure. I've never heard mother figure before. But I'm not saying it has to be a role model. It's just a consistent person around all the time who is happening to be older. I think that plays a part. It can be leadership. She's naturally in a position where she is a leader to these players. And it forms a bond. It forms a love. It forms an understanding because you go in and you're recruiting, you're getting to know these kids before you even bringing them into your locker room. And once they're in your locker room, you get to know them even better. There was 11 transfer players from UAPB or came to UAPB 2 years ago. 9 of them graduated this spring, so spring 2024, with either a bachelor's or a master's, and she was there to watch them cross. I think that that's great. I remember I had a teacher of my own who left my high school, I think, before my junior year. And she still showed up to my class's graduation because our class was important to her. That class that I graduated in was an important class for her. It was the last one she had before leaving the high school. So she still showed up to the graduation and she still showed love. And that was appreciated. I remember for me not knowing she was back there and then walking behind the curtain and seeing, oh, there goes my teacher. I remember appreciating that. And I'm sure that these ladies appreciated that as well because it shows the relationship. When I see Asia Wilson, and she has a great coach in Becky Hammond, and it seems like they have a great relationship, but I still see the love that she shows towards Dawn Staley. So when she shows that love towards Staley, now I'm sitting here like, I want that for everybody, because that's not something everybody gets to have. Everybody doesn't get to have that. That's a strong force in her life. That's an important person. When they're up here announcing the shoe, it's Staley, it's Hammond, it's Wilson. They're all there. So I think that you got to remember, we see the percentages of people who don't get to play the sport after this. I'm sure the percentage shrinks when you get into basketball because it's not as many teams, specifically in the WNBA. It's not as many roster spots. It's just a lower number. And maybe you want to go overseas, but even then, the number just isn't high for many of these players. It's the last time they'll ever get to play the sport that they love. And Coach Dawn Thornton was their coach. And for her to show up, I think it just shows the bond and shows what this is all about. And that's forming relationships, that's caring for people, and it's all here on display. Shout out to that. I hope that I didn't sound too sappy. I hope that I didn't sound too emotional. Emotional. But yeah, this is important. This is dope, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing that. It made me happy. So sometimes I like to take things that are just little tweets to tell you why it's important to me, why I think it's cool. And that was a typically segment 3 type of shows or segments, segment 3 type of topics. So I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. On tomorrow's episode, we'll be back. I can't exactly remember what it is. I think we'll be looking at a Prairie View wide receiver who just transferred in and was returned to the FCS level. So I think we'll talk about him in at least segment 1 or 2. Segment 1 or 2. So yeah, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.